Hey guys, it's Brendan with Production House 45, and today we have Joe Gugino, photographer and key health and safety production assistant for the show Dr. Death on NBC. Joe, how you been, man?
I'm doing great. How about you, Brendan?
I mean, I'm not doing too bad myself. I'm glad to have an interview with you. I've been waiting for this. I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, it's
For
been a minute.
I went to school with Joe for video production, so we did a lot
Yes,
of
we did.
projects together in class, and hung around the old studio and shot a bunch of stuff.
Oh, we so did. Oh my
uh,
God.
what a time! I
So
miss
much
those
stuff.
days. I really do. I miss having all those, everybody in that one like scary room at McEwen, just like in the
Oh my
in the
God.
back. What are you up to now? What are you doing? What's keeping you busy nowadays?
So nowadays I work on the NBC show Dr. Death, which will premiere on Peacock, which is like their streaming service, kind of like their Netflix.
Hmm.
And I work as a key health and safety production assistant.
Oh, nice. And now that's with the COVID protocols and everything, keeping pretty much
Yes.
everyone safe on set.
Yes. And it involves So they so another title, if you will, is that it's an enforcer or an officer,
Hmm.
which means, you have to like go around and tell people, hey, mask over the nose and the face, and the mouth. Uh, Spread out a little bit. You're a little too close. But then there's also stuff that people don't really think about, like you have to measure the square footage of a space to make sure that you have a proper number to be able to guarantee there's enough space for people to be 6 feet apart.
Interesting. Yeah, I would have never even thought about that part of it.
Oh
Because
yeah, no.
when I think of it, I just think, just making sure people are 6 feet apart in general and wearing their mask. But there's more to that than that. What else do you do on
Definitely.
that?
So we measure square footage of spaces to make sure that we can post an occupancy like 10 people are allowed in this room at once, or preparation of locations. So we also have equipment, protective personal equipment that we hand out to the employees, like masks and alcohol wipes and like mini hand sanitizer dispensing, that sort of things, face shields. So we deal with a lot of like preparation to make sure that all that equipment is ordered and stocked and we have plenty to disperse. We make sure that specific locations are prepared as well. So there are certain locations we've shot at that are huge. They're gigantic. Like there are multiple sets in this one specific location. So we have to make sure that all of that is prepared and ready to go even before the crew shows up. Like we're talking like a day or two beforehand.
Wow. Now, what department is that? That its own department, or is that like locations, or is that still with the
Oh,
assistant director?
that's still us, health and
Ah,
safety. But we
okay.
do work closely with the locations department so that, when we go to a place that is not the stages or like, just the normal sets, that we can get into the buildings and that we are okay to, excuse me, we are okay to hang up specific signs on, doors while using the right tape so that you don't ruin the paint job. It's a whole deal.
Hmm.
And then something else that we do that we're heavily involved in, and that's like almost the entirety of our department, is testing.
Testing. Okay, so you guys deal with the actual testing.
Like you have no idea.
So are you doing the testing, or do you kind of make sure everything runs well? Like, do you have like nurses or some sort of like set medic on set doing that stuff, or is it you guys?
So basically, how it works, from what I am able to sort of like disclose, is that we have a supervisor, which is an RN. Usually, the supervisor of the COVID department, from what I've talked about with other shows, is like an RN, like a registered nurse. But our testing, we do the coordination of, and we figure out the logistics.
Gotcha.
We work, and this is pretty much common with NBC, and I also did the same job on a Netflix show before this. So different company, same idea. We work with a testing company that has, the resources and the employee power and all of the logistics to be able to test like 220 people in a 5-hour window and make sure that we get results the next day.
Wow, that's crazy. How has life on set changed since COVID?
So I will be honest, this is the most involved I have been directly on set. So everything that I have as an experience is sort of like fresh eyes. This is primarily my first time really experiencing set life, but I can tell you from recounting with other of my coworkers, this is a very different beast. But it's still Hollywood. There's
Hmm.
that much has not changed. But there's a lot of things that you have to keep in mind now. Like we work very closely with the AD department because the AD department is basically set management,
Oh
and
yeah,
they do a lot of logistics and coordination with talent and with crew and with making sure that everything's done on time. And now we have to coordinate with them about just making sure that we have all the legal names of talent, because when you cross a medical world and a production world together, the medical world does not like stage names. They don't
gotcha,
do that. So we have to work closely with the AD team so that we can bridge those two worlds.
gotcha.
And just a bunch of other things, just so many. We God, actually, how about what's something that you have specifically, like a specific question?
Okay. I guess the size of the crew, like, is it any different? Like, I'm guessing that they would have less people on set just to, keep people safe, or would you say it's the same amount?
So that depends. I would say that uh, our crew is actually pretty large, but it's film production, so there's a
Hmm.
lot of day players, and even day players, that much has changed a lot.
Can you tell me more
So
about that?
yes, so the concept of day players has not changed, but guaranteeing the day players, it takes a little bit more planning,
Hmm.
because I'm not going to disclose like specific policies of how the testing cadence works, but in order to have someone on set, they need to be cleared for testing, which means that you do, and this is pretty universal amongst companies, you need to pre-hire test, which means that depending on the company, it's anywhere between a week of clearance or a 48-hour window of clearance that you need to be able to test someone so that they can get on the job. So it's different from the previous world of production where you can just call up your guy and be like,
Yeah, be like,
hey,
hey,
I
come
need
here
someone
tomorrow.
today or
Yeah,
tomorrow. Yeah, you need to be like, okay, I might need you next week, so can you come in and test? And then once they're all cleared and they're good to go, then they can get on the job. So they
gotcha.
probably have to think a little bit more in advance of like, okay, I definitely want this and this is my primary people, but then I want a couple of these guys as my backups
Gotcha.
or people.
Yeah. And I could imagine I know just from reading other kind of articles and stuff, I can imagine that the takes you can't, is there like a set amount of takes you're allowed to do in a said day to cut down on, like, are the 12-hour days still 12? Like, are they hard 12-hour days now?
So that's a great question, actually. I remember this is a big one because they are actively trying to shorten the days a little bit. Um, Sometimes we're done within like an 11-hour day. Sometimes we finish in a 14-hour day. That's like the longest it's gotten. Usually we do pretty good staying in a 12-hour window because studies have proven that the more sleep you are able to get, the more potential your body has resistance to contracting COVID and the ability to stay healthy. What a concept.
I know. I mean, even without COVID, I feel like work. I remember I would be working on a job and working like 16-hour days, and then maybe getting 4 hours of sleep because I'd have to drive like an hour and a half home, or like,
Hmm.
it wasn't as close as in working in the city, out here in the Hudson Valley. A lot of the spots we were in the middle of nowhere and I'd have to drive home an hour. Even the crew, a lot of the van ride was still like an hour or so back to the hotel.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd sleep in the van, but still, it's not comfortable sleeping.
No,
Um,
definitely not.
but
And
that's,
yeah, no,
that's,
like I would say to answer your question, yeah, time of a day has definitely shortened. Like fratter days are less of a thing. We've only had like
Oh,
one
thank
or two of
God.
those.
I mean, that was always a pain working on set, was those Fratter days, and just
Yeah.
in general those long days. I mean, I'm a big advocate for shortening, days. I mean, when we do projects, I try to, keep it relatively short. I mean, I know it usually doesn't work out that way planning wise. I mean, you were on one of our projects that we recently shot.
I was.
That to help us out. You're one of our health and safety production assistants, also helping out with a bunch of other stuff. But
Yeah, I
that's
think I remember
another.
doing Boom Up.
Yep, you're doing boom op. Another thing with the indie industry. It's just like, with these productions, I guess they have the means to kind of have this huge crew and still kind of solicit these tests and get everyone, make sure everyone's on the same page testing wise. And then when it comes to like indie, I feel like COVID's kind of almost made that like impossible to do, just because you can't really. What are you going to, with us, it's like, are you going to trust these people, who aren't a big company, to make sure everyone's
Exactly.
safe, I'm
It's a really interesting thing that you bring that up because it's very true. Because I because it's not that indie productions don't want the safety, and it's not even that they can't afford it, but it's not going to be on the same, most of the production companies, the big ones, have endless pockets, so they can shell out this much for testing and this much for the people to come in and test and all that stuff. On an indie production, you kind of just get tested at an urgent care or a
mhm,
hospital and then pray that you get the results quick
quick
enough.
enough and be like, hey, keep
I'm
it
pretty
safe.
much good. And
I mean,
then you just wear masks.
yeah, wear masks and social distance. I mean, we haven't, yeah, it was probably the first thing we shot since COVID. I mean, even that, it was very small. It was you, Peter, Dez, and the actor.
Yeah.
And, I remember just getting everything as a producer for that, just getting everything ordered for that and just making sure everyone was safe. I mean, it's just a whole new world. It's scary, it's scary. I mean, that's the main reason why we haven't shot some of our bigger stuff that we've had planned, just because that does need a full crew and we don't feel comfortable enough that we can kind of make that safe enough at that
Hmm.
size. And we're actually, going back and rethinking, you know, a strategy and kind of making it, simplifying the crew, um, kind of getting into the aspects. I mean, indie is all about restrictions. I remember,
Yeah.
the good thing about this is hopefully it breeds um, some new creative ways of pulling off this stuff. I mean, a lot of the things that I noticed from like quarantine were the quarantine film festivals and just like quarantine projects that people did was either them alone in their apartment, or a few, like kind of like what we did was like three people, or four people who like kind of shot stuff. um and it's interesting what you can do with so little. And I mean, that's the big thing about indie productions that I almost love. But also, again, it just goes back to like, this whole time is just making it really hard. It's still making it really hard, for a lot of
Oh
indie
yeah.
productions.
I think once we're at a point where safety is a lot less of an issue, like safety is more guaranteed, I think indie's going to pop off. Like there's going to be so much indie going on. And the stories that are going to be told are going to be awesome.
I know. I mean, a lot of this time has been. I could, I have a lot of people, writer friends. I'm sure you've been doing some writing. I've been doing some writing. I mean, it's a good time. We've just been stuck inside, just writing story. I mean, how many
right?
pandemic shows or movies are going to come out of this?
I
Or
think Grey's Anatomy has been doing a
Grey's
COVID
Anatomy
storyline.
Grey's Anatomy did a COVID. I think SNL's doing COVID, skits.
30 Rock did a reunion thing with
Yeah,
COVID.
30 Rock did a union thing. It's crazy. It's almost interesting. I think Superstore too. There's that show Superstore.
I
They did
believe
like a
it.
COVID thing, which is it's cool. I mean, it's not cool, but it's crazy that
It's a reflection on the times.
it's reflection on times and just looking back at it. It's kind of like this is film is also a part of that storytelling, not just for entertainment, but also for history. Like
Exactly. Like
this is
this
going to be
is
forever ingrained in television and film.
definitely. No, I 100% agree with you there. I have heard uh like speculation. So I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's difficult to be in health and safety because like the Tom Cruise thing, which we're gonna talk about later, but
Yes,
just to
well, yeah.
like pull an example right now, you can kind of tell with the controversy that there are two sides where, I think the right side is to be safe and that this is a very serious thing. But then there's the other side that, you have to determine how far is too far,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to human relations.
Mhm.
Um, Hold on, let me think about where I'm going with this. But yeah, film is a big part of, just capturing that moment because it's high stakes, it's high stress, but people got to live, people got to get going, and we
Yeah,
can do it safely.
and people, the big thing is people got to get back to work too, and I know
Hmm.
that's been a big topic here in America too. Like, do we value going back to work over our safety? And is it okay for us to go back if it's safe? And I mean, I believe to a degree some of these productions are keeping it safe. I think some productions may not be, it all the really depend. And that's the thing. There's no
Yeah.
universal, that's the thing. There's no universal rules. I feel like there are some, but it's to varying degrees. There's not like one organization looking over all productions to make it like a
No.
unity thing. So that's where it's like, you might be on one production that takes it very seriously, and then you might be on another production. I mean, bigger ones that, there's going to be some degree of seriousness, but there's always going to be those people who don't wear their masks right, or think it's stupid and they're only doing it because they have to work. And I mean, I know
Yeah.
you probably deal with that like nobody's business. Like you probably have to tell a lot of people to keep their masks on.
You know what's kind of funny? I think I've been lucky, but the two shows that I've worked on since, like, productions resumed, most of the people have been pretty good. Because like most of these people are, I would say north of 40, probably like mid 30s onward, and like, they probably have families to upkeep, so they understand that when they come into a production with like 60 people minimum, or maybe like 150 people, and they're dealing with like a lot of background, and they're dealing with stand-ins, and they're dealing with just like a lot of rules and stuff that they have to understand. Okay, so when they go back home to like their families, that they're not going to, make them sick.
I mean, yeah, that's the big thing, especially being on crew, because I mean, you're seeing so many different people, and again with these day players, some of the people you've never even met before, or
Mm-hmm.
just there for the day. They're just there to to help out because someone else couldn't be there, and it's film wasn't really the wasn't made for COVID times, but
No, it was not.
because I mean, if you think
It
about the
most
camera, I mean, the
definitely
camera
wasn't.
department, you need like six people in the camera up close, and in general, I mean, it's just a lot of people in tight spots. I mean, I don't know. There's been some apartments I remember shooting in. It's really tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a fun time sometimes with that, especially I couldn't imagine with COVID. Um,
It's really hard. And yeah, like specific departments like camera and directors and sound, no one really thinks about it, but of course the sound department has to deal with a lot of that because, boom ops, they can physically distance themselves, but they're still in those like tight spaces,
Yeah, they have to be right up
sharing the
like
same air.
close to the camera, where they can't be seen, or hidden somewhere. Still on set, still in the core. Because the way I think about it, it's like the core people who have to be on set: camera, sound, first AD, director, kind of. Well, even the director, they can be in like the
They can kind of be
village.
in another room. Yeah, they can
Yeah,
be a
but
video village.
it's like that's the core people who have to be there.
Oh, definitely. Especially
Even
like the
that,
first AD.
and even that's still like kind of a lot of people in a tight spot, especially with
It
COVID.
is. And
Um,
that's why testing is so important.
yeah, and
Testing and PPE.
yeah, testing and PPE, and I mean, I'm glad that things are going well, and you guys, they have this department. I'm glad your job exists, and that you're keeping people safe. I really appreciate what you do with that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
And it's been enlightening to see just like how all of this can throw in wrenches in like the standard production workflow, because there are some that don't really change. Like the more standard office people, like, production coordinators in the UPM and, the art departments, like not like even like construction to a degree, those are all pretty easy. They see the same people every day for work. Maybe they have to like interact with someone else at a kitchen, but especially like depending on the office space, there's a lot of ability to like separate yourselves, but it's
Mhm,
definitely the set life where it changes everything.
mhm. Oh yeah, for sure. And I guess kind of going to it, like with the whole Tom Cruise thing, what's kind of your opinion on that? When he was blown up, for those who don't know, Tom Cruise, they were shooting the new Mission
Oh, yes.
Impossible movie, I believe, right? The new Mission Impossible
Mission Impossible 7?
7. Oh my God.
Yeah, there's been a lot of them. A
And
lot
he
of
actually
them.
blew up on some crew because they weren't wearing their masks and stuff. And it's been a lot of controversy in the film world where people are like, it was the right thing for him to, say something, but also in the same reason it wasn't, I see a lot of people are like, number one shouldn't be yelling at people, but also people don't, he's also the executive producer. So it's like kind of, it's a grayer, like, and, I just want to
It
see where
is a gray area.
you want to see where you stand kind of with that. Like what are your thoughts on that whole incident?
So this is kind of where California production and New York production have very stark differences, because Mission Impossible is being shot in Los Angeles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I think I saw some stuff about it in London. I'm not entirely sure. London's actually another really good example too, because the cultural impact of COVID-19 in New York City was devastating. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think like this is all common knowledge at this point, but just to put it into context, I lived on the same train line, like that Elmhurst Hospital, like the war zone on COVID-19, with like the incredibly high, death rates and the spreading and all that stuff. Like I was in that same MR subway train with all of those people, no mask. Remember, this was, you know, early 2020, January, February. I was on that same train. I haven't gotten COVID, knock on wood, I'm
Mm-hmm.
good. But it was bad here because the infrastructure just, like, this is not a social distance city.
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly dealing with people all the time.
Even
And
outside,
plus,
even on the walk, when you're walking.
yeah, exactly. Like on the sidewalks, on the crossroads, and the subways, everywhere. Even in the office space, you're constantly dealing with people. In California, you drive everywhere. It's very easy for you to leave your house, get in your car, go to work, do your work thing, maybe go out to like a restaurant or something, and then drive home. The
Mm-hmm.
mentality is just different. And the way COVID spread in California versus New York at the beginning was way different. Then things started to change when New York culture cracked down, went very, very serious about wearing a mask all the time when you're, interacting with other people that are not in your household, um, in stores, on the sidewalk, in the workspace. We cracked down hard as a city on wearing masks and social distancing, at least to the best of the ability. In California, it's a different culture.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see we were still when production resumed in New York around like July or August, really picked up in September. In California, and we haven't as a state shut that down yet. In California, they actually did shut down production, like statewide. Production was not allowed for a good chunk of time when it resumed in California, like around November or December, something like that. Like the governor was like, "Okay, yeah, we're doing like a huge quarantine again, just like in March."
Wow.
So that is where I think Tom Cruise specifically was coming from, because, like you said, he's an executive producer on the project. When he says, "I'm going to fire you if I catch you doing this again, no apologies needed," he's coming from a different place of power. It is a gray area. The first shouldn't be lashing out at people like that and making like a public example. It's not particularly good PR,
Mm-hmm.
but also, I mean, he was definitely coming from the right place. If your people on set are walking around like, "Oh, my mask is down, I'm just out here," you're like, what if you had COVID-19 and then
Yeah.
you
You
spat,
shut.
or you shut down the whole production for 2 weeks
Yeah.
and
I
no one's getting
mean,
paid?
yeah, and no one's getting paid. I mean, that's what happened with the Batman. I mean, Robert
Robert Pattinson,
Pattinson,
yeah.
he got it. They had to shut down. They shut down a few times. Like it really like shut, like it really stops things, And I feel like people
Yeah,
don't realize that, And it's not just, oh, we're not showing a movie. It's like that's someone's job. For 2 weeks, you're not getting paid. Now you're pushing the schedule. You got to, the production company is now spending more money to
because
make
they have
this
to rearrange everything.
everything, and it really puts a wrench in everything. And I think, as much as I would hate to be getting yelled at, number one, but he's an executive producer. I think in a way he was right. I'm really against yelling. Like I hate when people get yelled at on
Yeah,
set. It's a very tense work environment where
already.
everyone's working long hours away from their families at sometimes, late, overnights, or, whatever it is.
It's
It's a very
demanding.
stressful, it's demanding, film asks for a lot,
It
and
does.
sometimes you don't get that back. And
Not always.
it really, it wore me down. It wore a lot of people down that I know. I mean, there hasn't been a time where, you're working on set and you're like, wow, I really like, you can feel the morale just gone.
Yeah, there have definitely been moments in the Netflix show was different because it was only like a month and a half, because they had already shot like 80% of the show.
Mhm.
So they were just finishing out the rest. It was only like a month, so it wasn't that bad. And it was multicam, so days were pretty short in comparison to a drama where it's 12-hour days, 14-hour days. You're going all over location. You're like long hours. And you can tell when that, exactly what you said, when that morale dips. And especially when that morale dips during peak uh, COVID infection rates. I've been doing this since like August, so I have a pretty good idea of you know what happens during the course of a production during COVID. For as limited of a time that it is, but in quarantine, you're in a pandemic time that feels like eons.
Mhm.
But yeah, you can definitely tell when people are nervous. People are worried about their own safety and the safety of their loved ones. It's a very, very big deal that we make sure that people can go to work and that they're not stressing about, you know, their lives or their loved ones' lives while trying to pursue a career that they love to do. It's very important that people can just focus on their job and not have to worry about these external factors, which you can even tell like in Tom Cruise's, like what he was saying, like, this is what I sleep with at night. as an
Mhm.
executive producer, asking all these people and all these companies to cooperate and make this project work, I would probably be torn up by it. That's
Mhm.
hard. That's really, really hard. I don't even want to think about what the health and safety department on that movie has to go through.
I know, especially those huge, huge productions. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that's not that. I mean, Tom Cruise, he works on really like with Mission Impossible stuff. Those are huge crews.
Yeah, ginormous. Like probably 400 people in a day,
Yeah,
easily. And then
especially
like
heavy
second teams.
stunts. Yeah, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
heavy stunt crew. That's a whole nother department you add on for the day. There's the
Yeah.
core
Oh, the stunt
departments,
coordinator and all that stuff.
and then their stunt team. Because I know I always know there's like the stunt guys always bring a few guys. Just in case they need some people there.
Yeah.
Better safe than sorry. And that's another
Could you
whole
imagine trying
another.
to make that Luke Cage scene today?
Oh,
Oh my God.
I'm trying to think of just making movies in general. It's crazy. Like I'm trying to think of things. I don't know if I've watched anything that has come out that was been shot during COVID. I can't really think anything has come out yet.
I
Um,
think WandaVision
was it? That
wrapped
was
up
I was gonna
production during
say.
COVID.
Hmm,
But
I'm
I
gonna have to
don't
look.
know if what we're seeing right now was pre-quarantine or post-quarantine. I think the later stuff is post-quarantine.
I think a lot of it is shot before quarantine and then finished up post.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I know
I
a
was
lot of
reading a little bit about it.
shows. I know a lot of shows that my friends are working on. They're returning to finish. They had a few weeks left, or a month
Yep,
left.
yep.
Well, a few weeks that turned into a month just because of time.
Just because that's how production works.
Yep, yep.
Like, not even surprised when they say, "Yeah, it'll take a couple weeks." That's translation for buckle in for the next month and a half.
I know. Well, I mean, that just brings me back to when COVID actually hit. When I was working on a project, I was actually in the city. We they told us, hey, we're gonna go dark for like 2 weeks. We'll be back up. You know, we'll keep you updated. And then that 2 weeks turned into 3 weeks, and then that turned into a month, and then they basically kind of stopped they paused the show and production. That's when all production in America halted,
Stopped. Yeah. I
which was
think
crazy.
I have a similar story to that personally. Like I was going to be an assistant editor on a talk show like in March. Like I had the job offer in writing and then production stopped. They were like, "Hey, so we're going to hold on this. We'll talk to you later." And I think we know where the story goes. That job
Yep.
went away like the wind in the breeze. But it's honestly, I'm not like the kind of like during quarantine I felt really sad. But
Mhm.
post quarantine life changed and
There's a new
I think
norm.
like yeah, there's a new norm. I think like a lot of people I sat down with myself and I said, "Okay, do I really want this thing or am I willing to try out this new thing?"
Mhm.
And if you asked me like a year ago if I would be doing something like this, I'd be like, "Are you? No, that
No.
sounds absolutely nothing like what I want." And then I got the taste for it, and I'm not gonna lie, the production bug is an infectious one. Like the rush of production. Oh man, it feels great.
I know. I know.
Like when you see that talent that you've like idolized since you were like a teenager, when you're just taking care of some mundane chore and you look to your right and they're just reviewing the scripts and you're like, "Oh, it's that person," and then you
It's
just
that first.
dart.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
and
I
then you just
know.
dart out of the room because you don't want to like make them mad or something.
Or
And then
like,
you actually get to connect with them and they're really
yeah, and then
cool.
you realize you work with them and you're like this is like a coworker, and it's
Yeah,
just like this is so weird that I'm hanging out with you. Like we're just in a
right?
room, like before COVID, like just in a room
Yeah, definitely.
talking about like life, and you're just like, how did I get here?
It always comes down to some stuff like that. Like I have had like conversations with like the number 2 on this show where like afterwards I was just like, how did I do that?
It's crazy. And then you also realize, they're people too, that's their
Yeah,
job. They're an actor. And
it's
you're like,
true. You
and
really realize how humane everyone
I
is during
know. And
COVID.
you're just like, in that, and just in general, you're just like, they're people, you're idolizing them, but also it's just like, no, this guy really likes kombucha. Like, I love kombucha.
Right?
Like, I love kombucha. Like, I'm no different than you guys. Like, we're all just making a movie together.
Right. At the end of the day, and something that I think did change in COVID, like kind of bringing back to like how has set life changed.
Hmm.
I think the talent in a lot of ways has actually gotten more humble because they realize that all of these people are risking their safety to create this project. And that, like, I have some really like amazing experiences because of the talent, because of, sort of like the humanity that settles in, just like, wow, these people really want this job to work.
Hmm.
And me just like being here, spitting out some lines, they're willing to do all of this so that I can do this job. And you get some really cool treatment because of it. It's not like, it's still production. There's still a lot of those rules. But it's really cool to be able to experience like just like a humble side to these talent.
Hmm. With that being said, what's some I guess words of wisdom you want to say to like indie productions that are trying to shoot now and don't really know where to start with COVID and everything?
Ooh,
What would you tell them?
great answers. So I would say make a guideline that you follow based off of the CDC or the World Health Organization involving workplace protocols and back to set protocols. And I even do some research on what the unions are doing and the guilds are doing, because in a lot of the bigger productions, the unions will put out like a specific set of guidelines of this is how we want production to be done. This is how the safety should be expected. This is what our coworkers should go into. So, in terms of words of wisdom, um, exterior shots are very easy because you don't have to worry about indoor spaces and you don't really even have to worry about occupancy as much, and you can distance. Uh, Interior, just make sure that you have the proper equipment, that everyone is tested in some way, and that you keep it limited. And then as long as you have that, you should be fine. Prepackaged meals.
Yes, prepackaged meals. I
Prepackaged
mean,
meals are very important.
mhm. Yeah, because I mean that's what crafty is nowadays, right? I mean, I could imagine
Pretty
crafty's a
much.
whole nother, a whole nother ball game. No more, just
Actually,
fruit.
yeah, that's a good point. Crafty now has a specific person that you go up to and ask for what you want.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I just, you go up to the person, you say, "Hey, can I get like a bag of gummy bears and like a cup of coffee?" And, they'll just make it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget. I feel embarrassed by doing this. I remember it was one late night I was working on a project, and I went to go. I put my hands in like the M&M jar, and one of the camera ops was like, "Dude, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Just grabbing some M&M." She's like, and she was just like, with those grimy like those mitts, and I'm like, "Oh," I'm like,
Oh,
"Yeah," I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh, you know what?" This was before COVID, and I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
right?" I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even think." I'm like, "Yeah, you're not wrong." And ever
Oh,
since
yeah,
that
no.
moment, I always poured into my hands or had a cup and like poured into the cup. And then every time I would see someone do that, I'm like, oh God, I'm like, you know what? I'm not the only one doing it. And on a set full of other people, like it's gross. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of good things to come out of, COVID protocols. I hope, short, like I said before, I'm a big advocate for shorter days.
Yep.
Um, more
Cleanliness.
cleanliness. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, in general, just not even production, just in out in the real world. I'm glad that grocery stores have like the hand sanitizer dispensers when you
Hmm.
walk in and walk out. I mean,
The
I'm just
subway now has them.
yeah, like it's just like things I even think like now. I mean, I always carried like hand sanitizer on me when I left the store, or something. But I wasn't as I'd do it, and sometimes I forget. It wasn't a big deal. But now I'm like, I have it in my car, I have it in my
Hmm.
room. I always have it on me, and it's just like, even after COVID, I'm going to be doing this stuff.
I think after COVID, I'm definitely going to continue to wear masks during the winter time and during the like whenever I go into the subway, I'm gonna mask up.
Yeah, and I think flu season for me, for sure. I think it's going to be different. I
Oh,
mean, that's a big thing too. The flu hasn't really been that bad this year,
mm-mm. I
and it's
think
just all
there's,
because of mask wearing and
yeah,
cleanliness.
combination of four things: cleanliness, masks, work from home, and actually a lot of people like this. I was researching this. This was like 2020 was like a record year for flu vaccinations. Like I think I don't remember if this number is correct, but I think I heard something like north of 110 million people this year took the flu vaccine because they were like, well, I definitely don't want COVID. I guess I also don't want this flu.
Yeah,
So, yeah, no, it's pretty great. We
yeah,
have learned that we can curb stuff like the flu along with COVID if we just mask up when it's
yep.
appropriate.
Have you been in a movie theater?
The last time I was in a movie theater, period, was 2019 for Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I think that was the last time I was in a movie theater.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, in New York City, the last time I was in a movie theater was for Cats.
yeah,
Yeah, that who would have thought? Who would have thought that that would be the last movie I'd see in New York City, like in a theater setting?
yeah. Joe, what got you into filmmaking? Like, what kind of like
That's
got
a
you into
great
this
question.
field?
So, there's a couple things. First, I had a really good communications program in high school. Like, we had comm club, we always shot like shorts and projects and all that stuff. And we learned Premiere and After Effects. So by the time before I went to college, even I like knew how to do like tracking in After Effects, which was really cool. And just like basic understanding of editing in Premiere compared to what I know now, it's like night and day, obviously, and like the curriculum is way different too. They don't teach you the like the ethics of like storytelling through the edit or anything about cinematography other than please be in focus and like please keep the framing fine. Like they taught
Yeah,
us like basic stuff.
yeah.
So that was great, and that's how I like became really good friends with some of the high school friends that I still have to this day. And in terms of like things as a kid that I watched that made me go, this entertainment thing is pretty cool. Um, Movies like Back to the Future
Hmm.
uh, just ignite that fun, energetic excitement that you get out of watching a movie. The Iron Giant was always like a favorite of mine as a kid, just from
Oh,
like a storytelling standpoint.
yeah. And
And
also
then
just animation
oh,
too. The animation in that was crazy. That was one of my favorite movies as a kid growing up. I remember buying the DVD version of it, and it had the little action figure of the Iron Giant, and I
oh,
had that forever.
I think the director's name is Brad Bird.
Hmm.
He also did The Incredibles. He is an incredible director, pun intended.
Boom, boom.
But also TV shows like 30 Rock specifically, just seeing like how a writer's room is represented apparently accurately
Mhm.
was just like, wow, that's wild. And just like exciting. And then, I watched anime like Neon Genesis Evangelion like as a 17-year-old, and I was like, wow, I want to do this. I
I
want to make
know.
stuff.
Joe, it was a pleasure having you, man. I mean,
It was
dude,
a pleasure talking to you,
I
dude.
could talk to you forever. I mean, and like most guests, it's just I love hearing what you had to say, and I'm
Thanks, man.
so thankful for all the information that you brought. Um, where can people find some of your photography and find you, learn more about you?
Oh, so that's a great question. So on Instagram, I am at Joseph Gugino, just my full name, all lowercase, no numbers, just Joseph Gugino. That's where I post a primary amount of my content. And I also have a YouTube channel that I sometimes upload like little videos and stuff like that, Joseph Gugino as well. I actually did a lot of vlogs during the quarantine summertime that actually somehow kind of led to the work that I do now in a bizarre like New York City is a big city, small town.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. And I'll make sure to plug that all in stuff below so people can just click it and find you. Any closing stuff? Any last words to the people watching and listening?
Stay safe and always pursue.
Joe, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure talking too.